Hello and welcome to another episode of Star Wars Starship Versus, the series where we take two of your favorite Star Wars spaceships, put them head to head, and see which one comes out on top. Today we're taking the Munificent Class Light Frigate, putting it against the Dreadnaught Class Heavy Cruiser. This matchup is requested on almost each video by Spaddle981, so thank you for that. If you have a matchup that you'd like to see, make sure you leave it in the comments, and if you see one that you like, make sure to give it a thumbs up so that I see it. As a bit of background, the Munificent Class Star Frigate was an intergalactic banking clan ship used during the Clone Wars by the Confederacy of Independent Systems. On the other hand, the Dreadnought Class Heavy Cruiser was one of the most common ships in Star Wars history, being used at one point or another by almost every faction. As always, we're going to compare these ships in the area of firepower, defensive capabilities, fighter carrying ability, while looking at them overall to see which one comes out on top. Now, this is a one-on-one ship battle, and we're focusing on the ships here. What that means is that we're presuming that each craft is captained by an equally competent person. That also means that we're only looking at what the ship would have normally carried on board, so it's standard complements. Sometimes ships will be upgraded. We're not going to consider those. Alright, so let's first look at weaponry, and we'll start with the Dreadnought Class Heavy Cruiser. It was kind of hard to choose numbers for this ship just because it was configured differently by so many factions. That being said, the Dreadnought was always exceptionally well armed. It would typically have between 10 to 20 turbo laser batteries, along with numerous anti-starfighter weapons. On heavier Imperial models, the ship actually would have up to 20 quad turbo laser cannons and 5 or 10 turbo laser batteries. The ship would also usually have ion cannons, missile launchers, and other standard anti-ship weapons. On the other hand, the Munificent usually had 2 heavy turbo lasers, 2 ion cannons, and up to 40 turbo laser turrets and cannons. These were combined with anti-starfighter weapons to make a very effective and well-armed ship in its own right. In my mind, based on sheer numbers alone, the Munificent was more well-suited for ship-to-ship combat. And if we're looking at the standard version of each of these ships, then the Munificent comes out on top in this category. It is worth noting that Imperial versions of this ship would have 20 quad turbo lasers and various turbo laser batteries. That would actually push it ahead of the Munificent class, but that wasn't the standard configuration, so I'm not going to count it in this case. Alright, next we have defensive capabilities, and we don't really know a whole lot about either of these ships. Both ships were similar in length, the Dreadnought at 600 meters and the Munificent at just over 800. Both ships are also fairly old. The Dreadnought was introduced in the waning years of the Republic, while the Munificent was obviously retrofitted during the Clone Wars. The Dreadnought is often referred to as being run down or crappy, but that's usually made in reference to newer ships like Imperial Star Destroyers. It's pretty likely that the shielding on a Munificent class would also be considered substandard at the time of the Galactic Civil War. The Munificent class and the Dreadnought have also never been compared statistically in any one sourcebook or video game. The Munificent class stats appear in the Revenge of the Sith Vehicles Cross-Section Guide, while the Dreadnought stats appear in the TIE Fighter video game. Now, both of these sources use different units. However, we know that a Victory 1 class Star Destroyer is about equal in strength to a Venator class cruiser. Thankfully, both of these ships are actually included in the two sources I just mentioned, so we can kind of get a little bit of an idea. Interestingly, when you use these comparisons, we can see that the Dreadnought is about 69% as strong as the Victory 1 class Star Destroyer, while the Munificent is about 67% as strong as the Venator. And when I say strong, I mean defensively, so these two ships are pretty much equal, so I'm going to mark this category as a tie. Alright, so the final section is fighters, and I'm not going to spend any time on this because although both ships could actually be configured to carry fighters, neither of them did on a regular basis. So this section will also be a tie. Alright, so now on to intangibles, and there's not really a whole lot that I want to mention. Other than that, the Dreadnought is considered to be a pretty high maintenance, but nonetheless cheap, and not super effective spaceship. It's like a bargain spaceship. But again, if the Munificent were used post-Galactic Civil War, that might be the case for it as well. I also imagine the Dreadnought to be a very slow, kind of clunky vessel, and I think that that's really how it's treated in the canon and the legends as well. On the other hand, I don't really get the same feeling from the Munificent. It seems to be pretty fast, pretty mobile, and is used as kind of a destroyer in large fleet battles. Anyway, let's look at the actual matchup. So both of these ships are pretty similar. They're not huge, they're kind of a medium-sized destroyer or cruiser. They're pretty well shielded, and they're well armed for their size. They're also both pretty old, although I will say that it feels to me like the Dreadnought is a little bit older and that the technology it uses is a bit more outdated. And I mean, as an example, the Dreadnought required a crew of tens of thousands of people, while the Munificent required a crew of 200. A lot of that is because of automation and superior technology. Nonetheless, I don't really think that that's what it comes down to in battle. And while both ships are well armed, I think the Munificent is actually better armed. It's got 2 very heavy turbo laser cannons on the front of the ship, along with 2 long-range ion cannons. On top of that, it has dedicated twin turbo laser cannons and light turbo laser turrets. These are all very effective anti-ship weapons. They're also quite heavy. On the other hand, the Dreadnought has 20 quad laser cannons, which aren't quite as heavy as turbo lasers, especially not the two main turbo lasers on the Munificent. And when you really look at it, the Dreadnought has only 10 dedicated anti-ship weapons, while the Munificent has actually over 40. That alone, I would imagine, should be enough to win the battle, especially when the two ships are decidedly pretty similar in the areas of shielding, fighter support technology, and everything else. With that said, I think the Munificent wins this battle 9 times out of 10. However, if we were dealing with an Imperial-fitted Dreadnought class heavy cruiser, I think things would be much different. That ship has very, very powerful quad turbo laser cannons and turbo laser batteries. I think that those things would wreck the Munificent class. Along with that, the ship would probably also carry TIE fighters, probably at least 12 of them, and would have had some upgraded shielding and other weaponry upgrades. So if we were looking at an Imperial Dreadnought versus a Munificent class, I'd give it to the Dreadnought probably 9.5 times out of 10, but with just the standard armament, just the standard complement, again, I give it to the Munificent. Anyways guys, let me know what you think of this battle. Let me know which ship you like more, with the Dreadnought or the Munificent, which ship's name you like more, because I think that they both have really interesting names, and of course, whether you think I did a good job comparing the two ships. Also, make sure to let me know which battle you'd like to see next time, and of course, if you see a battle you like in the comments, make sure to give it a comment and give it a thumbs up, because that's really how I see upcoming matchups. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, may the Force be with you.